2, 1, and we are live again. Welcome to the live stream show. And this week, we are going to talk about how you can move forward with sure footing. Think of that. I mean, a few months ago, I had this amazing guest on. Her name is Victoria LeBaum, and she had a book. It's called Risk Forward. And her whole thing was, how do you take that risk to take the next step? And she had a whole bunch of methodologies and modalities and activities to do, which I highly recommend that book. But today we're going in an entirely different avenue and direction. It's more about the energy that you can conjure. So my guest today is Carol Campos, and she is a life strategist and mentor. She focuses on empowerment, energy, alchemy, and manifestation. And she describes her teachings as Alchemy Underway, which is all about the strategies for fulfillment, joy, and abundance. Doesn't that sound good? So this is a thing, like in this world that we live in, there's all these things swirling around us all the time. Shiny baubles, choices to make, decision fatigue. What are we not only going to do tomorrow, but what are we going to do with the rest of our lives? And is this the life that we've really chosen for ourselves? Like, are we actually living the dream and or purpose that we are really meant to be? I mean, these are big, gigantic questions. And it seems like many a times with all the stuff that we're doing, we don't even have the time or the breath space to take that in. And if you are like me, and if you're like Carol, my guest, you are working for yourself. Maybe you're a coach, you're a consultant, you have your own little business, you work from home, just like everybody else has been doing for the last year and some. And you're doing it all. Like you've got all these things going and you have all these choices to make each and every day, each and every hour of the day. And it all feels like so sifting sands, uncertain future. So we're going to take a look at how can you do this? How can you do this and feel okay about the choices that you're going to make? So with all of that, let's get on with the show. Recorded live in Boston, Massachusetts, this is the live stream show. In a world full of underexposed entrepreneurs, the live stream show is your gateway to a global community of live stream pioneers who dare to go live and create something special and unexpected, which could only happen because it was live. I'm your host, Brad Powell. Let's get on with the show. All right. Welcome to the show, Carol.
Oh, thank you so much, Brad. I'm so excited to be here.
Right. So let's start our conversation around a bit of the journey that you've been on. Now, I know that in your background, you were working for a large company in the corporate world, and you faced sort of a lot of the challenges there. And you've gone through, just in the last couple of years, this major shift into the work that you're doing now. And so I want to hear some of that story, like just in the next minute or two. Give us just the general narrative arc of what happened.
Sure. So, I worked in corporate for a little over 20 years, and I have to say, at no point did I ever feel like I belonged there. I wasn't miserable per se, and I met some great people, but it never felt like that's my calling. But I was afraid to rock the boat because I was a single mom. I was raising my daughter. I had bills to pay. I had responsibilities, and it was too scary to leave. And then in 2018, I went through some things at my last job that really got me to the point of, I think I've had enough of this. And at this point, my daughter was grown. I had nobody to take care of but myself. I had, a pretty long financial runway to kind of feel safe about taking the leap. So I really didn't have a strategy. I really didn't have a plan, except that I'm going to leave and I'm going to just work on myself because I think that's what I need to do. And that's what I did. I left, I gave a month's notice, transitioned all my work. And for a few weeks after that, I really kind of spun out. And that's something I didn't expect. I just thought, okay, well, who am I if I don't have this title or these teams to manage, or I don't have this salary, these benefits? I mean, I went through like a mini identity crisis. So I ended up hiring a coach, and that was probably the best thing I could have done, because we really started diving into all the things that had been kind of plaguing me. Like, why do I keep attracting certain dynamics in my personal and professional life? How do I heal some of these wounds from my past? And then even uncovering blocks that I didn't even know I had. And as I started doing this inner work, that's when things started to open up for me. That's when I could see different possibilities for my life. And what I realized is I could take the things from my professional experience in business, the things I liked, mentoring and coaching, that type of thing, and then combine it with some of my newer interests, spirituality, energy, healing, alchemy, manifestation, so that they're, you kind of have these tangible things, and then marrying it with the more magical woo things, and then bringing that to people who were kind of in the same spot I was in a few years prior. So that's kind of how it all started.
Okay, so you're using this term alchemy, to
Yeah.
describe your work. And to me, alchemy conjures up, this mixture of science and magic.
Yes. Yes.
And, which is cool. Like, so how do you talk about it? Like if someone came up to you and said, okay, what do you do? And you go, well, I'm, I do this thing called alchemy. I'm a,
Yeah.
I'm a new alchemist, and then they go, well, okay, now what is that? What's your response to that?
Sure, sure. And that's a great question. And that's kind of what I think of too. I'm imagining test tubes and centuries ago, changing lead into gold. So, I think a lot of us have heard the term, we're all energetic or spiritual beings having a human experience. So we're all constantly evolving. So change is always underway, but life is always moving us forward. So I call my teaching Alchemy Underway, because working with energy is at the core of the work that I do with my clients. So it's this ongoing process with a myriad of tools that you can pick from, but the goal is for everyone to learn how to do this on their own. So alchemy is really a natural process that all things undergo to transform and transmute from an unstable state to a stable state. So when we're talking about spiritual alchemy, we get to ask, okay, where am I out of balance or unstable in my life? And I'll teach you how to alchemically transmute those areas and bring about greater balance. So we're working with, the laws of nature, the laws of universe, to accelerate this alchemical process. And through this spiritual alchemy, we kind of learn to shift our set point, that balance point, to higher vibrations. And as we raise our vibrations, that's when we're magnetizing and drawing all the things we desire to us.
Yeah. So give us an example. Can you tell a story, like either in your own experience or maybe in the experience of one of your clients? You don't have to name names or anything, but just walk through that process, like just some specific thing that you or someone was working on, and how whatever it was that they were looking for got manifest.
Sure, sure. So there was a time in my business, and it wasn't so long ago, that things had become very stagnant. I had some money coming in, I was doing some consulting work, but as far as my coaching, things were just kind of stagnant. And I thought, what on earth am I doing wrong? What's happening here? What energy am I putting out there that this is just not working? And I'm looking at my bank account and thinking, all right, something has to change. And I was scared. I just didn't know what to do. I thought, all right, am I going to have to go back to corporate? And then I just kind of stopped myself and said, okay, you know what, Carol? You talk a lot about manifestation and law of attraction and all of these things, but you're not fully embodying that. You kind of have one foot in and one foot out. And I think it was not because I didn't believe it, but there were parts of me that didn't feel worthy of having this abundance, that, this might work for other people, but it's not going to work for me. And I had decided, okay, for this month coming up, I'm just going to do the work. And what the work was for me is doing things to raise my vibration. So that was, walking in nature. That was doing visualization work. That was doing mindfulness work. That was meditation. I was doing ceremonies, all of these things that kind of felt like play. And I'd have these moments of feeling guilty that, I should be doing something. I should be putting a post on LinkedIn, or I should be marketing. And then I'd say, nope, this is the work. This is what you need to do. Well, like magic. And that's what it felt like. Within 3 weeks, I had brought $9,100 into my business just from doing this. And like I said, I wasn't doing marketing. I wasn't working on funnels. I wasn't working on my niche, my ideal client, none of that. And that moment, that showed me, it's like, holy crap, this actually does work. And it actually kind of scared me, because I thought, all right, this has to be a fluke. And what ended up happening is the following month, I didn't bring in anything. And I knew that was me as well, because I got scared. Because what happens is, if in your business, you put all the work into your business, and that's where your mind is, and the business is here and you're still here, you have nothing to support the business. So what I learned is I have to keep still working on me, raising my vibration so that there's a foundation. And then I found that balance.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. And it's not easy. I mean, when you're in a situation like you're describing, and I mean, anyone who's done any kind of freelancing understands the somewhat roller coaster ride that working for yourself entails. You have a good month, and then you might have 2 bad months, like where just nothing's coming in the door, and you don't know why. You don't know what, you're not necessarily doing anything different. It's just not happening. And it can feel, frustrating, scary, like you're doing, like whatever it is that you have to offer is just the wrong thing. Like you're questioning pretty much everything in those moments. And yet what you're describing in terms of, everyone, the conventional wisdom is all the stuff that you mentioned, like build your funnel, connect with your avatar, learn your customer, do this kind of marketing strategy, like go on to LinkedIn and start DMing everyone, like whatever, like do more of that stuff. Like, and big people like Gary Vaynerchuk, it's all about the hustle and, be everywhere, shout loudly, be profane, like be provocative, do these things, and just keep doing. And I don't know how somebody like that operates and seems to thrive, like if it's really true. But for me, and I think for a lot of folks, like I'm, we talked about this before we went live, like I'm definitely on the introvert side of the world. And so being out there like that all the time is in fact quite exhausting and unsustainable. And so this balance of, okay, today, my to-do list, like the things on the top of my list is I get up and I listen to a meditation for 20 minutes. And then I get on my bike and I get on the bike trail and I ride to Lexington, which takes, half an hour. And then I'll get a cup of iced tea and I'll sit there and I'll listen to one of the more inspiring podcasts that I like to listen to for another 20 minutes. And then I'll get on my bike and I'll ride back. And this is like, I'm describing my morning so far today. And then I get on and I get to talk to somebody like you and have a conversation like this. And all of this feels like, okay, well, now I'm doing work. I'm doing, work. But it's all part of this movement, which is, the things that personally for me light me up. I get to talk to interesting people, about interesting things that I'm genuinely curious about. I want to know more, because I'm talking about this, but I don't know. Like, I'm only trying things out, and I'm only just sort of seeing, what kind of works and what will be a good idea here. And so we're all learning, and, I mean, this is the thing that's fascinating, and I want you to speak to this part of it, is that in your process, clearly, and this happens with lots and lots of service providers, in that they become the messenger of their message. And clearly, this is like you've gone through this big experience of, jettisoning from the corporate world, saying, no, this is the wrong life. I want to find a better one. And doing all this personal work, and then realizing, well, there's a bunch of other people who just like me who need this. And now I'm equipped to help them out. And so here you go. But at the same time, the learning part doesn't stop. So how do you feel like in terms of your own trajectory of like, okay, so I am still learning, and yet I'm also coaching, and then dealing with any imposter voice that might say, but like, who are you to do this? And you just figured this out yesterday.
Yeah. I love everything you said. I mean, even you just describing your day with, the riding your bike and having your iced tea, and somebody who's not really kind of tuned into themselves might think, well, that's just, you're kind of wasting time. Like, get to your work. That is the work. That's part of the work. So for your question, I think I had a lot of stops and starts on the entrepreneurial journey. So, I get this kind of divine download at the start after, I started working with my coach in 2018, and I'm all gung ho, I'm gonna, be this kind of spiritual mentor coach, but also, use my business experience. And, I was all excited about it. And I decided I'm gonna get certifications, which you don't technically have to have for this type of coaching, but I had made a pivot later in life, and I thought, this is the right thing to do. But then I got into fear mode very quickly. So I remember it was probably winter, early spring of 2019, and my energy was just gross. It was very, all right, how many clients do I need to make this amount of money so I can cover my expenses and this, that? Who wants to work with that? I mean, people feel that, like that desperation, people just want to run the other way. So there were moments where I'm still learning a ton. And the other thing is I was following other people's formulas. So I worked with this one business coach, and it was a group coaching situation. And she was very much, you have to spend this many hours working on your marketing. You have to spend this many hours doing this. If you don't have your avatar, your niche, all of this figured out, your business is going to fail, period. So I thought, all right, I mean, she knows what she's talking about, so I guess I got to do this. But it just felt so heavy and just didn't feel right. So that was another learning. I finally came to the conclusion, like, no, I just need to, because that kept me in my head. If I speak from my heart and just talk about my experiences, what I'm learning, where I am, and share that, and kind of pull people along with me who want to learn the same things, that works so much better for me. So I think it's finding that your authentic voice. And, I think for people who are watching this, who some of what I'm saying may sound a little too woo-woo, I think we can think of it in a more secular way. So I think in this day and age, people's BS meters are really strong. And so when they encounter somebody who's not authentic, that meter goes off. People feel when they're being manipulated. People feel when somebody's selling to you with manipulation tactics such as, well, how are you going to feel in 3 years if you don't do this? And, just these same things you learn from so many different people. None of that felt good to me. And so once you start speaking really from your heart, yeah, it's not going to resonate with everybody. Some people are just going to fall off your map, but there are going to be the people who are like, oh yeah, I want some of what she has or what some of he has. And then they gravitate towards you. And it's not this pushing, striving, hustling type of energy you're putting out there. So that's been kind of my journey and kind of where I am today.
Yeah, I just want to underline one of the things that you mentioned, which is this strategy of interacting with the world, not as, the expert, not as the guru, not as the one who like, I have all the knowledge and I'm going to bestow it upon you kind of attitude, but more of the investigative reporter or journalist who is going out into the world and exploring and learning stuff and then coming back, with treasure. Almost like the archaeologist, like Indiana Jones going into the Temple of Doom and finding treasure and say, look what I found, and then coming out and saying, look, I got something here and it's really cool. This is like, I'm excited about it. And you can get to share that. And the immediacy of that, first of all, it brings, like, this is still following things that light you up. And then the energy that you have around that and the way that you can express it is at a much more elevated place than simply here's 5 ways to do X, Y, and Z, which is, I mean, in the world, like in the social media world that we currently live in, so many people, I believe, are following this path of just teaching stuff. And here's how to do this, and here's how to do this. And I've learned, like, here's how to. And the first part of that is, the internet, you can't how to teach the internet. If somebody wants to know how to do something, they just put in Google how to do this and you'll get 1,000 responses and you can just pick one and go ahead and figure it out. So if you as an individual want to actually connect with someone, just saying, here's 5 ways to do something isn't the best way, because when they search and try to find you, you'll be lost in a myriad of other people showing and talking about exactly the same thing, the same information. But what you're describing, this journey of discovery is totally different. It's like, I'm on a journey. I have a quest. Who wants to join me? We're going to Mars. And we're going to discover, what it's made out of and what we can learn from the Martians, whatever that is. And to me, this is just like a whole different, very refreshing way to undertake this change and transformation. And so 2 things happen. One is you get to live the life that you are choosing for yourself, and you get to share it abundantly with anyone who cares to come along for the ride.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And honestly, what I'm sharing isn't new. Florence Scovel Shinn, Napoleon Hill, Neville Goddard, Wallace Wattles, and a bunch of others were talking about all of this alchemy, energy, manifestation in the early 1900s to the mid 1900s. So, I was diving into these works and really absorbing it. But then, of course, that's how we teach, through our own lens, through our own experiences. And not everything is going to hit. Not everything is going to resonate. And that's totally fine. I'm very much of the belief of, take what you want and leave the rest. And even the teachers that I followed or thought leaders that I admire and respect, not everything resonates with me, but there might be a couple of nuggets that's like, ooh, I love that, putting that in the toolbox. And that's how I like to share. And I don't even really love calling myself a coach. It doesn't, because I share a lot about my own journey when I'm working with someone. I think that's the beauty of that type of relationship, is you can share your own stories, because I want them to see that I'm not here and you're here. I might be a little further along and I'm just helping you because I was just there. So that's kind of the way I show up for my clients. And it's probably why I didn't really love being in leadership roles in corporate, because I did tend to lead from the side. I didn't want to be here. I just wanted to chat with everyone and like, how's everything going for you? And and mentoring and collaborating. And that wasn't always appreciated.
Yeah, well, there's I don't know if you know the work of Ben Zander, who is a conductor here in Boston, and he wrote a book with his partner, Rosamund Zander, called The Art of Possibility. And one of the chapters, what in that book, they alternated, like one of them would write one chapter and the other one would write the next chapter, and it alternated throughout the book. And one of the chapters is called Leading from Any Chair. And this was Ben's writing. And he was talking about going to a trip to Cuba with his youth orchestra, the Boston Youth Philharmonic. And they were going to meet with a Cuban youth orchestra and then perform together in Havana. And something happened in the communication of on their way there, but the music never made it to Cuba. And so when they got there, none of the Cuban players had practiced the piece or knew it at all. And yet this performance was like imminent. And so he just said, okay, well, all you guys, you know it. So sit down with your corresponding, instrument player and show them the piece. And that's what they did. So they, like the whole orchestra was teaching itself how to play this music. And I just like that method, that method of leadership is one that, this is something that I have practiced in the situations that I've been able to be in. In a previous life, I was leading an outdoor school, which was a sailing program. And we went out in these little open boats that could be rowed and sailed. And, when you got on the boat, there was like 12 people, 10 students, 2 staff, and 10 oars. Like each student got an oar, a 12-foot oar, big, huge oar. It's like a little mini Viking ship, if you can picture that. And so, but I got in the habit, like in a boat, the traditional way of leading is you have a captain, and the captain is like God, and everything the captain says, everybody else has to do. As the captain says something, and he's like, okay, everybody scrambles. And I was like, no, that's not how we're going to run these boats. And literally, I would go up into the bow and just sit up there, like without doing anything, like sit in the very peak of the bow where there's nothing, and just wait for people to say stuff and do stuff and let them, like literally, like I was, it's quote unquote the leader, but I could lead. I found that I could lead from any position in the boat and not have to be the one directing traffic all the time. And man, it was really a refreshing way to do stuff. And the dynamic that evolves from that kind of leadership is so different. It's so interesting. And so I just wonder, like, in your experience of working with people this way, I mean, the thing about this is that all you need to be is like maybe a step ahead, or maybe like, okay, well, here's something, like I have this idea, but it's more of a collaboration. Like you get to work with people rather than for them, or as the like, here, I have the answer, just go do this kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, what I found was I think my team members were so much more empowered. And I think, I had learned, because when I first was put in leadership positions, I was kind of a control freak. And I wouldn't say I was a micromanager, but I was more nervous, and I would kind of check on things behind the scenes, make sure it was okay. And as time went by, I realized I'm not serving my team. Like they all have things about them, their own gifts, their own strengths. Let them align to that. If they need my help, they're going to come to me. So I always wanted to be that safety net. I always wanted to be that person to help, if they needed to collaborate. And what I would do is each week I would meet with each one of them individually. So we'd go through what were the challenges, what were your wins, and then we'd work through the challenges. And, this did 2 things. Number one, they knew I was paying attention, that I was there for them. I understood what their book of business was. But then at the end of the year, we had this whole documented list of awesome things that they had done. And it was very easy to justify why they deserved a good review at the end of the year. So I think it built trust as well. My team used to call me the mama bear. because I, as much as I am an introvert and I don't like confrontation, I will do it when I need to. And it was much easier for me to engage in confrontation when I was fighting for a member of my team. so, so that was kind of the dynamic I had going on.
Well, that's so interesting. Yeah, when you're supporting someone else, that it just feels more rewarding. It feels more like you're doing something worth
Mm-hmm.
doing. And I mean, I think that's probably what this kind of relationship is. Like when you're working with a client, you're basically there to support them. And if you're doing a good job, they are being supported, and they feel it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I
And
just
I think in the work that I do now, I just feel like it's almost like I want each individual client to kind of put me out of business, out of, I don't want them to have to lean on me. I really want them to be empowered to do all this on their own, still be, again, kind of mama bear in the background. If you need me, I'm there, but teach the tools. Don't, because what I've watched a lot in the coaching world today and in personal development is the way that some of these funnels are built. It's really designed to have you just keep using whoever this teacher coach is as a crutch. It all builds on top of one another, and you just keep needing them. And I don't want that. I want my clients to feel empowered.
Oh, yeah, that's so great. I just want to go back to something you mentioned a couple minutes ago, which was around telling your stories, like using story when you're working with clients. And I just, want to connect this to the whole brain science part of your modalities, where, and this is something, again, like I am absolutely fascinated by the idea that the neural pathways in our brain can be rewired completely, like just
Mhm.
new paths, new things, new ideas, new vision, new everything. But more than that, new reality. Like our brains literally can't tell the difference between what our vision, like what we're actually choosing to put in our brain and what we see there and the real
Mhm.
world. Like your brain can't tell the difference between that. So when you're
No.
telling story, like when you are using story, the same thing is happening, like the emotional content in a story. This is why, our brains are wired to story. And part of the
Yeah.
reason is that when we hear and feel and have like the character in the story is going through some kind of struggle or emotional strife, we feel the same emotion. It's no different at all. Like that emotional
Yeah.
response that we get is exactly the same, even if it's a completely fictional character, like totally made up.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
so when you're talking about, well, I don't do this, I just tell them stories, it's like, yeah, and you know what? That's just super powerful.
Yep. Yep. Well, I love what you said because you're so right. Our brain doesn't know the difference. Our subconscious doesn't know the difference between what's fictional and what's not. I think about when I used to watch Game of Thrones, I was totally addicted, and my heart would be in my throat. My nervous system was just totally frayed, and then I couldn't sleep, and I'm wondering why. And it's because, yeah, my my subconscious is thinking like I'm on that dragon right along with Danny, and I'm in danger. And you really do have to kind of guard the door of what's coming into your conscious mind, because yeah, it doesn't know the difference. So those times right before bed when you're getting into that hypnagogic state, and also right when you're waking up, that is a great time to start planting seeds for what you'd like to see happen in your life, because it's just very fertile ground for manifestation.
Yeah. All right. So someone who's been listening to our conversation here, and by the way, if you're here, I can see there's a few people who are recording the numbers. If you've got a comment or a question, go ahead and stick it in the comments before we wrap up here. And so someone who's sort of listening to this conversation and they're thinking, okay, I'm interested in manifesting something different and better in my world. Like I've got this challenge with my work, or I've got this big choice to make in my life, or whatever it is, like it could be any number of things. Where do you suggest that they start? If they're going to go like, okay, today I
Well,
want to do one thing, what would that even look like?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And again, there's a myriad of tools and things you can do, but I think an easy one to start with is first get super clear on what is it this thing that you want to manifest, whether it's a physical thing, it's an experience, could be a job, a relationship, whatever it is, get very clear on that. And then what I have people do is once you're very clear on what you want and why you want it, because and the why is important, and you've probably heard this before, because the why adds a lot of the emotion to it. And when you really get clear on your why, you go from kind of head to heart. Because if you have somebody who says, well, I just want $1 million. Well, why do you want $1 million? Well, I don't want to have to worry about bills. Well, why don't you have to want to worry about bills? And you kind of just keep getting further and further. And at some point, it goes from your head to your heart, where suddenly it becomes, well, I want the freedom to live the life I want. I don't want my family to worry. I want to be able to, XYZ. So getting really clear on what you want, why you want it. Then once you have that, that's when a lot of this fun stuff comes in, where you start visualizing like crazy. And I refer to it as hyper visualization. And you can do this in your head, you can do this in writing, where you are, let's say you're doing it writing, you're writing the scenario out as if it's already happened. So I kind of call it future present. So let's say you want to manifest this certain job. You're talking as if it's happened. So it's like, today was my first day. It was so great. Members of my team came up and met me. You're picturing the conversations you're having, the atmosphere, the culture, the smells, the sounds. I mean, you're really there. And it's like a movie of yourself, only you're not sitting watching the movie of yourself. You're in the movie. So if you're opening a door, it's you see yourself opening the door. You feel yourself sitting in a chair, and you just keep doing this, bringing that emotion to it, because the universe, your subconscious, your nervous system responds to that emotion. And as you do this and get excited, this is what raises your vibration, and it's all frequency and everything is energy. That's when you become a magnet for that thing and attract it right in. So that's where I would start, getting clear, starting your visualizations and repeating that. That's just one simple tool.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so I noticed that you have something going that's called divine breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
So tell me what that is.
Well, the Divine Breadcrumb was actually a podcast that I had started with my best friend
Okay.
at the end of 2018. We have it. It's on hiatus right now, but I also have a blog of the same name. And basically, divine breadcrumbs for us, it was just a phrase I used to use when, I'd have synchronicities or signs from the universe, that I would just kind of follow these breadcrumbs. So that's where the name came from. So we still have the website, and I think we have about 81 episodes up. And we had the chance to interview some really interesting people. There are some people who are healers. We have had authors, musicians, people in film, and it runs the gambit. So some really cool things. And then I share a lot of my own personal stories, and that's just another way I kind of share my journey with people so that they can see this doesn't happen overnight. It's a constant process. And that's where the underway and Alchemy Underway comes. It's because it's just never ending. We're always in progress. It's always underway. We're always transmuting and changing and healing.
Yeah, I love that. So, yeah, okay. So podcasting, I mean, it's, doing podcasting like this show is basically a video podcast, and I take all this content and I edit it down just slightly and turn it into an audio version, which is the Live Stream Show podcast. And
Yeah.
and if you're watching this, you can find it all the episodes on the livestreamshow.com. But it's what's interesting about podcasting. I'll say two things about it, and then I'd like to hear sort of your feedback on like what it was like for you. But number one, it's a great opportunity to be reaching and meeting anyone who you just want to reach. I mean, the sort of the best case scenario is you discover somebody and you go, oh, that would be so cool to talk to them. And then you actually invite them on your show and you get to meet them and you actually get to sit down and talk, which is terrific. Like, it's a terrific way to do any kind of like social interactive thing, especially when like cold outreach to meet someone, you know, out there who's, you know, famous or big or whatever is hard to do. Just to knock on their door and say, could we just sit down for coffee? But when you have a podcast, when you have a show, then you can say, well, how would you like to be on my show? And many times they're going to surprise you and say, yeah, okay, that sounds great. Let's pick a date. And so that's one part of it. The other side of it, which I don't know if people talk about very much, is that it's hard to do. Like, to do it consistently week after week, it takes quite a bit of time and effort and work. Sometimes it can feel like a distraction. You don't know what it's really, you know, doing in terms of what it's doing for your business, how many people listen, all that kind of stuff. And I know that for myself, what I have been teaching myself, and I'm still learning this, is that I no longer care or pay attention to the numbers. Like, it's not important to me whether the numbers are big or small or whatever the number actually is in terms of people who either are joining me live or who listen later, or any of that. Like, to me, none of that is the important piece. The important piece is, am I growing in the process, and am I developing healthy relationships with the people who I get to meet when I do this? Like, is that actually happening? And if those two things are happening, then great. What would I rather do? Like, what, you know, like if I had an outcome of meeting interesting people and developing a relationship or friendship with any or all of them, you know, there's no, especially at the moment when everybody is still in sort of social distance, semi-lockdown, we can't travel quite as freely as we used to. Seems like a good solution for it. And I'm just sort of curious, like, you had a co-host, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so tell me a little bit about, like, what was it like to work with a co-host, and then what happened to where you guys came to the decision to say, well, let's just put this on hold for a while?
Yeah, no, great question. So my co-host was my best friend of 20 plus years, and we had always wanted, so we had always wanted to work on something together. She's a web developer. She's had her own business for over 20 years, and I had been in corporate. So when, you know, I kind of had this epiphany about the divine breadcrumb and doing something with this, she was really excited too. It's like, okay, this is our chance to maybe work on something together. And somehow we decided, let's do a podcast, yet neither one of us knew anything about podcasting. I think she'll tell you she hadn't even listened to a podcast at that point. And so we just, typical divine breadcrumb, like the next day, she got an email in her inbox about a free podcast training. I think it was sponsored by Creative Live. And so we thought, all right, this is it. This is our sign. So we took notes and everything. And so on 11/11/2018, we launched our podcast. And like you said, Brad, what's great about having one is it really does give you license to approach anyone. Now, sure, they can say no, but you can approach them. And I think, you know, one of the things my friend and I had decided, you know, if it ever gets to the point where this isn't fun anymore, we're not going to do it because we don't want this to affect our friendship. That's not worth it. But as long as it's something fun that's kind of lifting us up, lifting others up, then let's keep doing it. So in the beginning, I think we were just all over it. And we did everything ourselves, like all the research, writing all the intros. She did the editing, you know, the promotion, all of it. And so, you know, it's a lot of work. And, you know, we had some guests that I was so excited to have on. You know, there were authors that I was excited to have on. One of my biggest nerd fangirl moments is I approached Dee Wallace, who was probably best known as playing the mom in the movie E.T., but she's since become more of a healer, energy work. She's written some books. So I approached her and I kind of went the backdoor approach through her Instagram account. And I got a very nice email from someone on her team saying, hey, you know, we got this. You need to send an email here. And I thought, all right, I'll try it. And sure enough, Dee Wallace wrote back. She came on the show, and I was so nervous because I wanted to ask her something that nobody had ever asked her before. Like that was my thing. And I was so excited because after I did the intro and did the question, she went on and on about what a great interview it was, how we asked different questions. She gave us a beautiful recommendation or testimonial,
Wow.
rather. So that was my big fangirl moment. So there were moments like that. There were other times where we'd have a guest who we didn't seek after they came to us. And we'd always vet people out just to make sure, okay, can they speak? Do they have a good story? Are they legit? And some things just didn't resonate, and you could feel it in the interview. And then it got to a point where I could feel we were just both feeling very overwhelmed, and we were both also being pulled in different directions. My friend was getting very busy with her web stuff. I was getting busy with coaching and a consulting gig I had. And the podcast became a have to instead of a want to.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of a gradual, we do it every week. Then it went to twice a month. And then finally we decided at the end of this past year, I think we're done for now. I think we did our last episode was in the can in March of this year. And it was sad, but it also felt like, no, this is the right thing to do. And who knows, we might pick it up again at some time. And we do often say, it's like, I do miss like talking to people. I do miss being able to just reach out to someone. But then we think of all the work and it's like, okay, we're just not in a place where we can take this on again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's completely understandable. I get it. I totally get it. And it's a lifestyle choice in terms of like, well, it's work and you have to decide that this is the work for you, like this is what I do. Like, again, I'll just relate to when I was doing the outdoor program, I was completely immersed in the wooden boat world. Like these boats were traditional. At the peak of my time of running that operation, I had 2 floating boathouses inside of which were, I think, 9 different wooden boats, 2 of which made cover girl for Wooden Boat magazine. And
oh, wow.
Just maintaining, keeping, like, I loved it. I was totally into the wooden boat. Like, I just thought it was the coolest thing. And it was kind of the coolest thing. And, in terms of like outdoor life and sailing in the San Juan Islands and Washington State and on, like going up into the Canada border into British Columbia, beautiful, beautiful area to be in. And the boats were truly beautiful things, and they took a lot of work to maintain. And I loved it. Like I didn't mind the work. I just was into it during that time. And people would come to me and go, "Wow, man, how can you do this? This looks like so much, whatever." And I was going, "Well, I'm choosing this. Like this is what I want. There's no other job that I want right now. This is it." And so it's the kind of the choice of like, do you want to do this or do you not want to do it? And I think that for content creators or anyone who's thinking of becoming a content creator of any kind, you have to be like, okay, I'm choosing this and I'm going to show up. And, the way Seth Godin talks about it, you want to be a professional, treat it like you're a knee surgeon. And when you have an appointment to do the knee surgery, you can't just wake up in the morning going, "Oh, I don't think I have passion for doing knee surgery today."
Right.
I'm just not going to do it. Like
nobody
goes to you wanting somebody who's passionate about knee surgery. They want somebody who knows how to do it really well. And then you'll actually show up and do the job. And same for brain surgeons and heart surgeons. So you can't just say, "Oh, well, not today. I think I'll take a break."
Right, exactly. Well, and the other thing is when you decide like, okay, even though it might be a little painful to let something go, it does then suddenly give you all this energy like, oh, now I can use that creative energy towards something that is lighting me up. So you have to kind of feel into that and see what's right for you.
Yeah. Right. So I think it's about time we can wrap this up. So if people want to get a hold of you and follow up with you and maybe even say, "Hey, help me out," what's the best way for them to do that?
They can email me at carol@carolelizabethco.com. They can also send me a message on LinkedIn. or they can send me a message on my Instagram, which is I am Carol Elizabeth. So any of those ways.
All right. That sounds great. All right. And for the rest of you guys, and first of all, thanks so much for coming on. This was a really great conversation. It's really a pleasure talking with you today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Brad.
Yeah. And so for you guys who are still here, this has been the Livestream Show. Keep on coming back. If you want to get all the episodes to the Livestream Show, go to thelivestreamshow.com and they are all there. You can catch and subscribe to the audio version, which comes out every single Tuesday. And of course, all the video versions are there as well. And if you want to subscribe and be always here, like the best part of this is literally joining me live. And one of the best places to do that is on YouTube. You can subscribe to Brad Powell on YouTube, and you will be notified every single time one of these live streams is coming up. So you can join live and join the conversation, which is the coolest way to do that. And so until next Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, we will see you. And